Electricast.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
To realize the future America needs, we understand what's needed from us. To face each threat head on. We've earned our place in the fight for our nation's future. We are Marines. We were made for this.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you.
I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up, and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host Iris, and I'm here with my older brother
Wesley. And today we are discussing a film from 2024, Harry Potter and the Architect Uncle.
Who is the Harry Potter character?
Who
in the
is the Harry Potter? Daniel Radcliffe, obviously playing Gervia or Sophia or whatever. The niece?
Oh, man. I full on said that to Brian. Does that look like Daniel Radcliffe? Wait, is that Daniel Radcliffe? This is so messed up, though.
And tying it to the Harry Potter franchise in a way that makes it undeniable, Elizabeth, or Elizabeth, as I'm going to call her for the remainder of this episode, played by Eddie Redmayne, who was Newt Scamander in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them in the Harry Potter universe.
We can't start the episode by talking about actors' physical appearances. Isn't that uncool?
I'm saying that Sophia, or however you pronounce it.
Zofia.
Yeah, Zofia. That was the silent beauty who was captivating Hungarian dudes and had to be protected from rape.
Well, Harry Lee certainly seemed to be captivated by her.
Okay.
Although he came from a whole family of rapists, apparently.
Spoiler, man, did not see that coming.
You didn't see which rape coming?
Any of them. But there should be an Oscar, like an honorary, or maybe a Golden Globe is more fitting for most awkward sex scenes in a movie. And The Brutalist would win. These were the least sexy sex scenes since The United States versus Billie Holiday.
So there's the sex scene between Laszlo and Elizabeth, which is kind of the culmination of their reunion and also Laszlo's healing. And then there's the rape scene between Guy Pearson and Laszlo Toth. Neither of those were sexy?
Nope, and nor am I going to argue were the hooker scenes.
Oh, yeah, in like the brothel or the bordello. So after the sex scene, after the rape scene between Van Buren and Laszlo Toth, there was an awkward moment of silence. I watched this with Brian. And then he said, "So is he gay?" And I was like, obvi. But then he clarified. And the question actually was directed at the Toth character because in the brothel bordello scene where he's being serviced, he's unable to complete the task at hand. And then he doesn't want to sleep with his wife. And so he obviously has sexual dysfunction, which I assumed was related to his trauma. But could it have been that he was gay?
What's strange is that never once entered my mind. That's interesting to consider because when Brian said, "Is he gay?" I thought you were referring to Guy Pearce's Van Buren character.
Right, exactly. Me too.
And
I was like, yes, obviously, if he's raping another dude, there's got to be some, or maybe not so obviously, because Van Buren was, I'm not qualified to talk about this, but isn't rape really just about power and exerting that power over someone else?
Yes, it is, but fundamentally driven, I think, by sexual needs or desires or whatever. I know it's weird to say that like someone feels the need or the compulsion to rape someone. That's obviously terrible, but the basis of a sexual need that people have no way to express other than subjugating others and exercising power over them. Yeah, I had 2 female dogs who would hump each other, or one would hump the other. It's merely a primitive desire for dominance. I mean, he called him beautiful, and I was like, really, Adrian Brody beautiful? Okay, not my type, but okay. And he can and felt like he could do whatever he wanted.
In addition to finding him beautiful, he also found their conversations stimulating.
Yeah, which he said over and over again, which leads me to this idea. We were watching the opening of The Brutalist where Toth and his cousin meet and hug and stuff. And Kelly said, is this movie going to make you and Iris uncomfortable? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I think this is just like European style, like really too close and up in each other's face and hugging a lot. And she was like, no, I mean, because he like touched his neck a bunch. and okay, and that was funny. But then this movie was full of entirely too close intimacy between family members. I thought maybe it was just a European thing. Can you imagine a scenario? So stay with me here. If we were like hosting a thing for family or whatever, holiday get together, and I came over and sat in your lap, or if cousin Joey popped in my lap, that's not going to fly. And I feel like that's a European thing, but it's also something that was very deliberately included in this movie, I think, to add a level of discomfort or anticipate or foreshadow some awkwardness, physical awkwardness that was happening later, because this dude, his name is like Bob Jenkins or something, the director. What's his name?
Bob Jenkins, Brady Corbet, or Brady Corbet?
No, he's definitely Corbet because he's firmly an American dude making this movie about Hungarian nationals escaping, the war. Maybe it's just because I associate Adrian Brody with The Pianist and...
that was Polanski?
Yeah, Polanski. Nikki Glaser introduced Adrian Brody as 2-time Holocaust survivor Adrian Brody.
Stop.
And
Stop.
I didn't say it. And it seems like he's so perfect in this role, probably because we haven't seen Adrian Brody really in anything else significant except for Wes Anderson movies, which is where big stars go to be quiet and look confused or pained. He doesn't really have a presence except in movies like this or in The Pianist. So when I saw this little American dude talking about The Brutalist, I was like, this guy? This movie? It was strange.
I also thought that with a movie that had such seeming historical significance and cultural significance, when he stood up and said, directors get final cut, I was like, really? That's the platform you're going to stand on right now? That directors get final cut? I get that probably some people took issue with the fact that his movie was 3 hours long and that it was indulgent. I would agree in many ways. But of all the issues that The Brutalist brings up, that's the platform he's going to stand on, was really strange to me.
You're talking about his Golden Globe win and this movie's Golden Globe win for Best Drama, even though the Golden Globes don't mean anything. And take it easy there with 3 hours. How about 3 hours and 36 minutes? Not including the frickin' intermission.
Did you take the 15-minute intermission, by the way?
I utilized the intermission for its designed purpose, which was to relieve my bladder, yes, but it was very necessary. This is not Titanic. This is not Avatar, both of which are James Cameron, which is strange.
Both of which are 3 hours runtime.
Your architecture is what we're doing for the 3 hour and 36-minute movie? Okay.
And yet the people have responded. Not only did this win for Best Picture, but he won for directing, and Adrian Brody won for acting.
But, I mean, there's this grand orchestral overture to start the film and the weird credits. But it felt like a completely other time.
So I was super annoyed at the opening of The Brutalist. I was like, I'm going to hate this movie. And maybe it's because I came in with all of this kind of dread and hesitation. But conversely, Brian was like, I love it. I love everything about it. He loved that, like Laszlo Toth's inspired buildings, the film had style. And he was the first person to point out to me that a brutalist is a certain type of artist. Did you know what a brutalist was, or did you just think that this was a movie about people beating each other up?
I thought this is just a Harvey Weinstein type of architect who's using his influence and power to subjugate other people, like a whole movie about Diego Rivera or something, where he's like a womanizer and a rapist and using his power is kind of what I expected this to be. And I was like, and we're facing a brutal rape scene? I don't know how this is going to go.
There were elements of Laszlo Toth when he was in his work mode, he was demonstrating those superior vibes, like maybe the ones that are necessary to get people to fall in line with unconventional ideas. But then that was coupled with the weird inability he had to promote himself. That was one of Van Buren's main criticisms. He's like, why didn't you tell me who you were? Why didn't you justify yourself? Why did you just walk away? And then, odd choice of timing, but during the rape scene, he's like, why does your people allow themselves to be marginalized?
Mostly I was just mouth agape, being like, he's raping him now? What? But
this is another question I have. I'm sorry. Was he just an opportunistic rapist? Like, was he biding his time until Toth was incapacitated to take advantage of him in some weird Italian catacomb?
No, I think for the Van Buren character, his desire for Todd was something that was suppressed his whole life. Because you could see he not only admired his skill or whatever, but also gave him those strange glances that I felt were, in my head, I was like, there's something weird going on here, right? Kind of with all the characters. Then it turned out it was right. I thought he was observing him and, whoa, Todd, Adrian Brody, please be more discreet. You're like all up on this girl at the party, or at least she's trying to be all up on you. You have a wife and Van Buren is watching you and he knows that. And I thought this was going to be, you came here to do a job, but you're compromised. You're morally compromised and that compromises your integrity. And I don't know if I can trust you or put all these, this $850,000 invested in you. And then he followed him, and I thought he was going to accuse him, but then he didn't. He wanted nothing to do with that girl because either dysfunction, or I thought because he was strangely loyal to his wife who was loyal to him. Not strangely, but it was a strange dynamic. And I thought he was going to go confront him or talk to him about it, and then not. Then I thought he was going to stick it to him in a different way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And of course, he has his own motivations. He seemed to like the attention that his modern library brought. Not only the attention itself, but the kind of attention that it brought to him. He wanted to erect this crazy, essentially, mausoleum to his mother. So there was probably some mommy issues going on there, informed his more than wayward actions. But he was his patron. And I think that he liked that Toth was humble. Maybe he saw Toth's humility and kind of the cracks on the surface as his, also an architect who was obviously very talented, but someone he could control.
Yeah. Did Van Buren die in what I called his Nosferatum?
What a weird loose end for this film. We're going to spend 3.5 hours and not know how Guy Pearce dies? It was a strange choice. I'm not even sure that he died. I mean, eventually he did, obviously, but why do I feel like he committed suicide after the rape accusation at dinner? I don't know. How did he actually die? I don't think it was intended to be clear.
So we left those characters, after Erzsébet's outburst, which was something. Like, she stood on her own 2 feet and things got messy and she went and confronted that super rich dude. It's a wonder she got out of there alive, but maybe not. Maybe her death was covered up for decades. It seems like we left those characters in the mid to late 50s. And then Harry Potter said that the Van Buren Institute dealie wasn't finished until something like 73. I assumed from that was when Van Buren died, either from suicide or shame suicide or whatever, that he was able to go back or something. But Brady Corbet had 3 hours and 36 minutes and couldn't bring it around to satisfactorily, I believe, resolve all these characters. So it seems like he was going with this thing and doing his own pace. And they're like, look, we can't put 2 intermissions in this thing. And so I think he hastily wrapped it up and crammed all the stuff into like a weird epilogue. It's like, and then this happened, and then they died, and he escaped, and then he went back and finished the stuff. Here's some pictures in a speech. Never learned what happened to Erzsébet, never really learned what happened to anyone. It's like they just kind of crammed it all in at the last minute.
Yeah. That was really strange. The whole music video with the pictures and the thing was very bizarre. But I also thought maybe he didn't feel like the Van Buren death was worth acknowledging with a clean wrap-up. You know, it's like people refuse to say the names of or show the pictures of criminals because, in a way, you'd be giving them the attention that may have motivated their crime to begin with.
Yes.
It was like he wouldn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Like he wouldn't immortalize.
Like glorify or promote.
Yes. By wrapping up his death cleanly, by letting us know what actually happened.
Yes, but you can say that and you can take power away from those who exercised power over others. But still, that doesn't make it satisfactory as resolve, because the movie was over and Kelly Ray was like, look, the rape allegation, which obviously no one witnessed and never made the news or anything, that's a really serious accusation unless that really happened. Did that really happen? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, did Van Buren actually rape someone? Like, is that historical knowledge? And I was like, I don't think that's a real guy. And she was like, what? And so I looked up Van Buren and brutalist architecture and rape and stuff just to be sure. And I was like, I know that there's the president, Martin Van Buren or whatever, right? And that's it. So obviously not, okay, maybe not obviously. Van Buren taught Laszlo Toth not real people. This movie has no real historical basis other than a Laszlo Toth, which apparently is like John Smith in Hungary. Like it's so common that no one, historically speaking, matches the themes of this movie.
Yeah, I saw a lot of Toths and Attilas and Zofias in the credits. But so you're saying that Laszlo Toth not historical person?
Yeah, one headline I saw said it's Lydia Tár all over again.
What?
Lydia Tár was an EGOT winner. Never existed in real life. Wait, am I blowing your mind right now? You had no idea? You thought this movie had historical basis?
What else motivates?
What else motivates?
The Brutalist.
No, what you're looking for is justifies. What else justifies The Brutalist? Massive in scope, to take the plunge on this movie that we're all dreading and only watched because it's received so much attention. Who greenlit this movie? I mean, the ridiculous expense, obviously, and the scope and building that actual, I don't care how cheap concrete is as building materials, even though, what's his name? It went to a frickin', what I assume is a real marble mine. What are we calling it? A quarry or whatever? And then someone, I think it was Guy Pearce, said this movie incredibly, the most mind-blowing thing to me about The Brutalist. And there are a few things, because The Brutalist showed me things I've never seen in a movie. And for that, I can at least appreciate it. He said this movie under $10 million, which to me should have been cast alone.
Yeah, and from what I understand, independently financed and picked up after its Venice premiere by A24. But it's still so bizarre to me. And in a way, undermines this film. I mean, can you create fictional Holocaust survivors? Aren't there enough heroic survivor stories from that time that you can pick a real person? Why didn't Laszlo defend himself with Attila? Why didn't he defend himself to Van Buren when he comes storming in?
Laszlo was living by the grace of others. I mean, the Millers seemed like they were, who became the Millers, Attila and his wife, were well enough to do furniture sellers or makers. I guess they were making furniture also. And he went and stayed with them and slept in like the supply closet. And she's like, when your wife comes, where the hell are you going to stay? and he seemed to take a message from that. But as well off as they were, he was still standing on the breadlines, and he was doing his thing and like architecturing with his little drawings at this firm when things went south. He didn't believe that he could get ahead, didn't really have, you know what I mean? It's not like he didn't have motivation or desire. It's like he had resigned himself to the idea that no amount of motivation would help him improve his station because he was just so far beyond an ability to make something happen for himself. But the Attila thing was confusing to me. Why didn't he stand up to him? Because I wasn't really sure. They had their dancing thing where Attila was, I believe, clearly in the wrong. Dance with her. Frickin' dance with her. You better dance with her right now.
I mean, he would accept nothing less.
And that was super awkward. And he was like, she doesn't want to. But then it seemed like she did. It was not true when Attila said, of course she told me. She told me that you came on to her. But he didn't. He resisted her so much, maybe because of his dysfunction or whatever. But then when they did dance, he came over and put the arms around them and everybody laughed and fell against the windowsill and stuff. So was he flat out lying because he was a drunken, crazy person? Or did she employ some menace that was difficult to see under her exterior and the swishy dresses and stuff and accuse him of coming on to her to get him out of their house?
Yeah, I think that she lied to her husband and accused Toth of advances because she wanted him out. Maybe he was draining their resources a little bit. But it seemed more like it was motivated by some kind of prejudice, that Attila had moved away from his Hungarian roots and she didn't want him to be associated with the type of image that Toth was bringing to their family. It seemed racially motivated.
Entitled racism, I think, throughout. But that was also kind of a thing. Like, you can't really get away from that at the time. There's a lot of xenophobia. There's people coming, refugees and things. And America is mid-war or post-war at that point. A lot of nationalism going on. Thankfully, we have nothing like that going on now. Like, just America is a melting pot and something when you stir it up. So we're good now, but not so much at the time.
You're joking.
It was weird, and it did set up the character. I was profoundly uncomfortable with the way the whole Attila thing resolved. That was very annoying. But let me talk about the hustle. Can we talk about the hustle in this movie that I think is what got a $10 million movie like this to look so expansive and to be so seemingly culturally and,
historically?
Well, it made it seem deep and profound, which I think is what this movie was going for, which I think was a little bit of a hustle, a little bit of a cheat.
Yeah, this seems to be not a theme with you, but something that you're aware of, something that you feel when we watch a certain kind of movie.
Definitely want it to be artsy. Do you disagree with that?
Nope.
Remember Laszlo, before this all went down with Attila, he was practicing his pickled pepper English.
While he was shaving?
Right, but I'm going to argue that wasn't actually him practicing English. That was us watching Adrian Brody's proficiency, his extensive training with a straight-edged razor on film in a single take. That's dangerous. That was the hustle.
I always get so nervous. I get so nervous when people shave like that.
Yeah, but all of this stuff, I think, was designed to make us feel like we're just waiting for the steel-toed shoe to drop. We were waiting for it to get messy.
Okay, so how is that a hustle?
It's not. It's just indicative of the misdirect of this movie is a serious movie and an important movie. And then it takes a wild turn with the rape and then wraps up very non-neatly. The drug thing was introduced and we needed the drug thing to, I don't know, to add some darker aspects to the Laszlo character. But he was pretty addicted because of his busted nose, presumably. And I thought that was going to be his undoing, that Van Buren was going to discover the drug use.
Right.
And then we cut to like 10 years later, and he's still doing drugs, but seemed awfully good for a heroin addict or whatever. It's like, so that's not a thing that we're putting on hold. So then it felt like a hustle. Like that dimensionality was added just so Erzsébet could overdose and add some kind of superficial stakes to the movie. the length of this movie, so languid at times and at other times, so that when we saw the train and we pulled away from that aerial shot of the train through the clouds, I was like zoning out. I was like, this is a movie with a long train trip. And Kelly Ray was locked in. And she's like, why are they showing the train? Like, is this supposed to be suspenseful? Is this train like going to crash or something? And then boom, the train crashed. And we got the clouds lit up by the flames. And she's like, there it is. But that was her engaging and kind of frustrated with where this movie was taking us. And then her intensive watching, where I was kind of zoning. And I was like, oh, I guess that's what it was. I just thought this was a long, languid movie. And they were getting production value out of that weird train shot. Remember when the whole operation of the Van Buren Institute or whatever was derailed because of a single train crash?
There must have been an awful lot of supplies on that train, because for that to halt the entire construction was a little bit bizarre. I mean, I guess it was also the bad press that everyone was anticipating, but train wrecks happen, as tragic as they are. It wasn't like foul play.
We didn't even see it. It was an orange glow through the clouds. That's a good hustle. And I think we were majorly invested in these characters, dragged into this long-ass movie. And I don't mean to say that it was bad or that I was cheated, because I was compelled all the way through. I can see the seams. And I found those seams and the people willing to fund those seams and people responding to it and making it to awards consideration. Fascinating. And then a movie set in the 40s and 50s, a period piece with really old lenses and stuff. Is that going to be the AI controversy movie? That's weird, right? So
it's so weird.
And so they're finding...
It's only a controversy because of Adrian Brody's win.
Well, and his prior win being in this specific type of role, the fact that he is Hungarian by descent. His grandparents had to flee. He took some inspiration and did honor to them with the Laszlo Toth role. So if you don't know, Adrian Brody, well, I guess that one of the sound design, or no, the dialect coach did say that Hungarian is a particularly nasty accent to nail right on the head. It's hard to do. It's complicated. And so for the Hungarian, they employed AI to give Adrian Brody and indeed Eddie Ray, Felicity Jones, the correct inflection for certain Hungarian vowels or something. And is he justified in winning a Golden Globe? Would he be justified in Oscar recognition for a role, which, like The Exorcist, was a cheat? Linda Blair didn't do the Pazuzu voice, but people didn't know that. And at a really young age, she was nominated. So now they're spinning it now. They're trying to say, look, his accent is his same. And I'm going to argue that Adrian Brody, at least, this was all about being all up in his face and really seeing the pain in his eyes and the pain on his nose when it's all broken and stuff.
The knitted brows.
Yeah, it was fine. But now they're saying that the AI was used only for Hungarian when they're speaking Hungarian. And that was in tribute to really getting the Hungarian language right out of respect for Hungarian speaking people. And thus it was a good thing and not a cheat. But you have to look at a movie that's as epic in scope, spanning decades, and with all this architecture and building and lavish rich people mansions and stuff coming in under $10 million is crazy. And so I look for the tricks, the wizard behind the curtain, to see how they could pull off such a thing. And that, I think, maybe, it's absurd to say, is probably the most interesting thing about The Brutalist to me.
The technology is crazy. And you know it's spin when the Brutalist PR people through, Brady, Corbet and team talk about utilizing AI to preserve their performances by changing vowels, Hungarian vowels. Like, I don't know how that's exactly preserving it, but I can get on board with them getting it right and still give props to Felicity Jones and Adrian Brody for, really dynamic performances in multiple languages.
Sure. I'm not going to take any away from their performances because I was reminded of how good Adrien Brody is. Like, he really acted his balls off in this movie.
Yeah.
And Felicity Jones, you got to give her credit for what her role is. Brought it, and for that I can't fault it. I can't fault the photography. It looked great. The production value was astounding. If there was CG in the church or the chapel or stuff when they ultimately built these huge structures, I'm sure they stole some other real brutalist architect's drawings and passed them off as Laszlo Toth's work in that slideshow presentation. But admirable the way that it came together, so that I don't really care about the controversy for AI. It matters that how the performance made me feel or whatever. The Brutalist, an all right from me, in spite of all that, because it seemed like audacious and totally foolhardy that they would invest $100 million in this period piece about a fictional Hungarian architect and the rich dude who's helping him live the dream or whatever. To do it for a tenth of that price is an achievement that needs to be recognized, 3 hours and 36 minutes or not.
When you talked about this being a hustle, I thought maybe you were referring to how they spent a lot of time in The Brutalist setting up things that kind of pay off. But overall, The Brutalist is making one point, that it's very hard being not only an immigrant, but specifically a Jewish immigrant in America, and perhaps the most so during the time period that this movie takes place. And the solution is we're going to go home. We're going to go back to Israel. And when this becomes like a Zionist film, then it feels like this whole movie has just been in service of making this one point, that the only place that Jews are going to belong is in Israel. It felt like this movie was in service of this one decision that was made by this family, this couple, to return to their homeland, and that was in many ways going to solve the problems that they were facing in America.
A movie about cultural identity? Not at all the perspective I took. I looked at this from a filmmaking perspective. Did this need to be in 70 millimeter? And then I think that this is one of the few movies where that format was actually employed to great effect. I think the scope and the frame of The Brutalist really helped it. I did feel the scope here in a way that also, in a way, feels like a hustle. This felt like a very different time style movie.
And that's our discussion on The Brutalist?
I think so.
818-835-0473 or whatevermovies@gmail.com. That's how you get in touch with us to let us know what you thought about The Brutalist. Or whatevermovies.com is where you find all of our discussions. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
For those of you who dream of a world where music and podcasts live together in perfect harmony, now, for the first time, Electricast gives you a magical compilation, Pod Till You Drop, Volume 1, where we give you the best in tunes and the best in podcasts. Feast your ears and hear the culture. Available now wherever you listen to music.
Everyone has heard about the U.S. space program, but what is actually going on at NASA? Get the real story in 4 minutes or less with the NASA Daily Podcast from Electricast. Join astronauts and researchers as they conduct groundbreaking experiments, work on the International Space Station, and reach for the stars. NASA Daily, your cosmic update.
Electricast. Electricast.